This is a very important video because this goes into all of my videos that demonstrate the foreign nature of this doctrine of sinful nature. That is foreign to the Bible. And I'm going to show you here that even from the beginning of the Bible is foreign. So let's dig into it. Numbers 14, 21 through 23. This is from the Septuagint. That's the Greek Old Testament. If you don't know about this, go to the link down below in the description that says Old Testament. It'll take you to our website, to a page that talks about the Old Testament manuscripts and why we reject the manuscript in Hebrew that was invented by the Jews 1,000 years after Christ. And why we embrace the Greek manuscript of the Old Testament that was created 250 years before Christ. That's a huge difference in ages between the two manuscripts. So let's get into it. This is the Rooted Word, Common English Edition, translation into English of the Greek Septuagint from the Codex Vaticanus. That's the oldest Bible that we have in existence. Numbers 14, 21 through 23. However, I am living, and living my name is existing, and the glory of the Lord fills up within all the land. That all the men staring at to discern my glory, and the signs which I do in Egypt, and in the lonesome desert, they also pierce me that 10th time. And not listening internally from my voice, certainly if they will not themselves stare at to discern the land, which I swear to their fathers, then, however, the children of them, who are existing with me in this same place, as many as have not seen good, nor even worthless evil, every unpierced young one, to them I will give the land. But all the ones sharpening alongside me will themselves not stare at to discern it. Now, you may say that doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard before. Well, part of it is because you're probably unfamiliar with the first 5 books of the Bible. Most familiar with Genesis, second most familiar with Deuteronomy, but then the other 3 you pretty much ignore. Or maybe it's Exodus that you're more familiar with and less with Deuteronomy. On top of that, the whole Old Testament is pretty foreign to a Christian. You don't spend as much time as you really should in the Old Testament because that was the Bible for the apostles and Jesus. If you also include the deuterocanonical books, which are typically called the Apocrypha. Those actually are in the oldest Bible that we have in existence. They're not separate. They're not set off in the middle or set off at the end. You know, we got the middle, right? The oldest Bible in existence has the Old Testament and New Testament. But the Apocrypha is integrated in with the Old Testament. It's not separate from it. So let's have a look at this more closely and see what we can learn from it. He says, however, I am living, and living, my name is existing, and the glory of the Lord fills up within all the land. It's not much that needs to be said about that, is there? You have to understand, though, that there are 2 living beings who are mentioned here in this verse. And you might miss that. It says, however, I am living, and living, my name is existing. It's very interesting, isn't it? Well, we're talking about Jesus. And that same kind of wording is at the beginning of John. In arche in ho logos, kai ho logos in proston theon, kai theos in ho logos in the Greek. In the beginning and authority, it means both at once. In the beginning and authority was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. I am living, and living, the name of me is existing. There are 2 individuals mentioned here. The Father and Jesus, the Word. And the glory of the Lord fills up within all the land. So now we have a third, which is the Holy Spirit. Verse 22, that all the men staring at to discern my glory and the signs which I do in Egypt and in the lonesome desert. So that's only a specific group of men, not all men everywhere throughout all time. It's only those who fulfill those three requirements. Number one, they're staring at to discern his glory and the signs which he does in Egypt and in the lonesome desert. The signs which he does in Egypt and does in the lonesome desert. Staring at to discern his glory. All together. All the men who are in that situation. They also pierce me, like trying to test him to see how much it takes to make him angry. They also pierce me that 10th time. So he's indicating, God is indicating his long-suffering, his patience. 10 times he's waited while these men keep trying to pierce God. And not listening internally from my voice. And it is from, not to. And not listening internally from my voice. Certainly, if they will not themselves stare at to discern the land, which I swear to their fathers, then, however, the children of them who are existing with me in this same place, etc., 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 right? So let's focus on this first and we'll get to the rest of that. So, he's saying that God is trying to speak to them eternally, to guide them and keep them on the straight path, and they will not listen internally from God's voice. And since they will not listen internally from God's voice, then they will not stare at to discern the land. They fulfill the first part of the if then, which God swears to their fathers, meaning Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then, however, their children, the children of them, their children, who are existing with me in this same place, so those in the desert also, as many as have not seen good nor even worthless evil. This is the same phrase, almost exactly, as what's used in Genesis 2, verse 9, where it says, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What that says in the Greek is the tree of seeing, a knowing of good and evil. It's this same phrase. They're saying the same thing, except evil is a little different. In that one, it says harmful evil with Adam and Eve. That tree was having the seeing, the perception of, the seeing of the knowledge, the seeing of the knowing of good and harmful evil. Here, it's, well, I included it in the translation here, have not seen good nor even worthless evil. Harmful evil and worthless evil, two different words. Now, they mean slightly different things. Worthless evil is not intentionally harming others, and yet it's still evil because it's not useful. You're wasting your time. You're doing things that are counterproductive, that are not useful to you or other people. Especially other people and God. This is worthless evil. Harmful evil is intentional. So they're very close, but they are different. But it's talking about the same kind of thing. Remember, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree, they became aware of the distinction between good and harmful evil. It's a pretty big difference. The difference between good and useless evil is a little less than with harmful evil. But still there's a difference. Still good and evil. But it's a little less difference than harmful evil. And these children of theirs that God's going to give the land to, they've not seen good nor even worthless evil. They don't perceive that distinction. Every unpierced young one that hasn't been tested in a temptation and trial, to them I will give the land. Now, understand, there's something very deep right here that's being said. That the youth do not understand a difference between, they can't really see the difference between good and worthless evil. But also it says that in general, young ones are not pierced with these things. If they are, it's something that's not natural to them. It's from adults that those piercings come to some select young ones. But it's not something that is inherent in young ones to be pierced and experience what is literally temptation to sin. Now you say, but I know young people who sin all the time, but without a knowledge of good and worthless evil. And those who do end up doing that learn that from adults, especially in our culture today where you have access to all kinds of information and exposure to all kinds of things. Whereas back then it was far more controlled. So what it's saying here is that there is no sinful nature that's inherent in man, that he has from birth, that causes him to sin. No. That's proven right here. You can see that this is the same thing that Adam and Eve had before they ate the fruit. So what we may also be seeing here is that what the serpent introduced to mankind is adulthood. Through the fall is adulthood. This awareness of good and harmful evil and the distinction between them that caused us suddenly to be aware that we're naked and ashamed and trying to invent something to placate that feeling. And so we became aware of that. But this especially saying it's the youth who do not have that distinction indicates also to us that Adam and Eve may have been youth until the point that they sinned and fell because of the serpent's lie. That desire to be like God is a rite of passage to adulthood. That's right. That desire to be like God or like a God is a rite of passage into adulthood. And we all know that. We discover our powers, our abilities, to where we don't feel like we need what we thought we needed of support and control over us of authorities, even God, for many people. Then he says, he ends these 3 verses with this, but all the ones sharpening alongside me will themselves not stare at to discern it. It is the land. To them I will give the land, but all the ones sharpening alongside me will themselves not stare at to discern it. And the word it is in the same gender as land and number, singular. So We know that. Singular feminine. It's the same. It matches. The ones sharpening alongside me, they're alongside para. They're alongside sharpening like they're going to attack God. They're preparing an attack against God. And it even said, up here, said, they also pierced me that 10th time. Sharpening alongside God, trying to keep piercing him. They will not stare at to discern it. So you need to evaluate your heart and your actions and your words. Are you one of those who's alongside just so you can sharpen and pierce either God or his servants? Because if that is what you're doing, as so many arrogant men who are destined for hell do when they come to this channel. If that's you, you had better drop your weapon, get on your face before the holy God, because you will not escape. You will not make it to the promised land. You are destined for the lake of burning sulfur, that everlasting, eternal second death. And if you have any hope of evading that, it's now. You better get on your face. Humble yourself before God. Agree with him. Confess what you've been doing. Your sedition against God through his servants. Be healed and be saved through humility. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.